Baker, former Clutterholic, founder of clutterclearing.net, bringing you the next video in this series on clutter clearing cycles. Now, I shared with you the negative clutter cycle and the positive clutter clearing cycle, and it seems that it's resonated quite a lot with people. They're noticing which steps are missing or which steps they've kind of got stuck on, so that's a good thing. And we now know that we need to create the positive clutter clearing cycle. Now, the next few videos we're going to go into detail about those cycles and our clutter clearing journey, but today I just want to do a quick reminder and a summary of the steps and the factors that go into it, because we're going to need to know these and be aware of them and clearly aware of them for what I'm going to explain starting tomorrow. Okay, so I'm essentially going to do a quick summary on the board, so we've got this to hand to apply to what I'm going to share with you over the next couple of days. All right, so on the board, I'm not going to draw the actual cycle this time, not being great at drawing. I'm going to do it more as a list, okay? It's exactly what we covered last time with the clutter clearing cycle. So, the positive clutter clearing cycle. Okay. 10 steps. The first step is that the clutter grows. Clutter grows. Worth noting that sometimes the clutter grows and we don't necessarily notice that it's growing. A lot of people, when they start their clutter clearing journey, they do a clutter clearing session, they clear a bit of space, and then a couple of days later they wonder, hang on a minute, what have I actually cleared? Because the clutter has grown back. We're not necessarily aware when the clutter actually grows. The second step of the positive clutter clearing cycle is exactly the same again as the negative clutter cycle, and that's the clutter growing leads to a lack of space. Lack of space. Okay. Again, both cycles are exactly the same. They're exactly the same for the third step in the cycle as well. And that's when we reach a point of wanting to clear it. Clear it. Okay, and as I've mentioned before, this is a really important step. It's not uncommon that I get calls from friends, family, partners, even community groups, social services, etc. They want someone to clear it, but the person who owns the clutter hasn't yet reached this stage. They may have reached a stage where they've got a lack of space, but it's not affecting them enough and it's not affecting them negatively enough that they actually reach the step of wanting to clear it. Okay, so I will only work with people who have at least reached this stage, this step, number 3, that they want to clear it. Okay, the phrase I use is, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Trying to get somebody to want to clear it, trying to even negotiate with them, persuade them, logic and reason with them, that's not going to get them to this step. Okay, it's something we naturally have to get to. It's what I've always referred to as your true turning point. I've experienced this with my weight loss journey, with my clutter clearing. It was only November 2015 that I actually reached the point that I wanted, really truly deep down, to actually clear my weight clutter. And it had to come from me. It didn't matter what other people said. So these first 3 steps are the same for both the negative cycle and the positive clutter clearing cycle. Okay, so everybody goes through these 3 steps. That can often be one of the frustrating things, almost in terms of, have we realised that actually we are on the positive or the negative cycle? Because we all want to clear it, don't we? Okay, this is where things start to change for the positive clutter clearing cycle. At the fourth step, all change. The fourth step is where we get the 5 success factors. Success factors. If you can't remember what those are, don't worry, I'm going to do a summary of those in a minute. But it's really important that we notice what we need to succeed, okay? Again, an analogy, we're not jumping in the deep end, we're not doing a blitz, we're not getting storage solutions, we're not reorganizing and moving the clutter. There are 5 specific success factors that we actually need to take on board at this step. We can't bypass this if we want to get into the positive clutter clearing cycle. Okay, the 5th step is that once we actually take on board the 5 success factors, that's when we start to succeed, and that's where some of the clutter clears. Some clutter clears. C-L-E-A. Now notice, some clutter clears. Okay, not all of the clutter, not even necessarily a huge amount that you notice, but some clutter clears, and this can be really frustrating. The 4th step, taking on the 5 success factors, is tough because we've not done that before, but then realizing that only some of the clutter will clear, especially the first time that we're going through this cycle. A lot of people can give up at this stage. Okay, yes, I managed to clear some clutter. Some clutter came off my conveyor belt, but not enough. Not enough to notice a real difference, not enough to create plenty of space. Well, we're not doing a blitz this time, are we? We're clearing our clutter slowly yet surely, fitting it into real life. If some of the clutter is cleared, if some clutter is coming off the conveyor belt, then we are in the positive clutter clearing cycle, okay? One important thing that I get my clients and members to notice is the significance of what they are doing, not necessarily the size. And so here at step 5, this is where it's the significance of the clutter clearing coming off the conveyor belt, not the size, because it may only be a little bit, especially if you're working with paper. Paper is small in volume, large in quantity. If you think about when you buy a ream of paper for your printer, that sort of an inch can have 500 pieces of paper in it. That's a lot of pieces of paper, 500, but actually it's only a small volume because it's only about an inch in height. Okay, good. So after we've noticed that some clutter has started to clear, the positive benefit of that is that the clutter is used. Clutter is used. Now, some people were surprised that when I was talking about the clutter being used, that it wasn't just us using it. We are not the only people that can use the clutter. By letting it go, passing it on, other people can actually use it quicker than we can. I'll give you an example. In the very early days, I worked with a lady and social services. She was in shared accommodation and her clutter was taking over the communal areas, and she was at risk of being essentially evicted. Her intention for keeping a lot of paperwork was from a very good place. She wanted to read the information. It was a lot of newspapers, leaflets that she'd picked up, booklets, things she'd printed off the internet. And she wanted to read all these things. She was worried that she would miss out on some of the information. And she didn't like waste. And particularly so in terms of the environment, because, you know, the effect that paper has on the environment. And so her intention was good. She didn't want to waste. However, as I pointed out to her, by her holding on to all of these the pieces of information, all this paper, all these newspapers, not only was she getting herself overwhelmed, because the amount of time she would have needed to read all of this and go through it all and absorb all of the information. And of course, some of the information was so out of date that it was no longer relevant or current. But by holding on to it all and having it in the home, the people who actually make the newspapers, make the leaflets, were not getting their supply of paper. Because it certainly used to be something like 5 days. You let go of a newspaper and it gets used as a newspaper again within 5 days. Probably bit shorter now. So the people who make the newspapers, make the leaflets, make the paper that you use in your printer, need your old paperwork in order to recycle it and put it back into the system. If we don't let go of the newspapers and the paper and the paperwork and the leaflets and everything, and we don't recycle it, then those people who need it can't reuse what we've got. So they actually have to go and cut down more trees in order to make more paper. Okay, so actually it's not environmentally friendly to hold on to lots of paper. It is more environmentally friendly to let go as much of that paper as you can, so that it can be recycled and reused. And by letting go of it, you are actually protecting the environment and making sure that there's no waste, and making sure that they don't need to go and cut down more trees. So again, her reasoning for holding on to the paper was a good intention. But it's what I call poor execution. So funnily enough, she reached a point where she was ready to let go of the newspapers, understanding that she could now get this information on the internet if she ever needed it, and if she ever particularly wanted it, acknowledging that a lot of the information sheets that she had got were out of date, because a lot of them were sort of 5-10 years old. And we ended up filling a whole skip with paper that went off to the recycling centre. It was actually donated, the skip was donated by a paper recycling firm, because they were that keen to get hold of this paper that had otherwise been stored and held in this home for a good 5-10 years. So again, the intention is good, and it means that when we let go of some of the clutter and we clear it, let go of it off the conveyor belt, the clutter is used. Not necessarily by us. Okay, so that is obviously a really good thing. Because we've let go of some of the clutter has been cleared, because it's being used by other people, not necessarily us. We then move on to the 7th step in the cycle, where we can actually see more space, or rather there is more space. Okay. Moving the clutter around is not going to create more space. Only when some clutter is cleared will we actually create more space. The 8th step, as a result of having more space, is that we can see and feel a difference. See and feel difference. E-R-E. Okay. And we see and feel a difference very, very simply because we have more space, because some clutter has come off the conveyor belt. Very, very common that clients and members will say to me, but Claire, I can't see and feel a difference. Well, again, because we're only clearing some of the clutter each time we go around this cycle, we may have to look closer to actually notice the difference. If a pile of paper has gone down from that high to that high, that is a difference. But again, we are perfectionists, aren't we? We'll go, oh, but the glass is half empty. It's half empty, not half full. You know, so we know, yes, but there's still so much to do. Yes, there is. But as long as we're clearing some clutter every time we go through this cycle, we will get there. Lots of littles make a lot. So we start to see and feel a difference, and sometimes we have to look closely for it. The 9th step in the cycle is that we start to get into the routine. The routine and the momentum. Of actually doing our clutter clearing. And when we do get into a routine of doing the doing, as I call it, Then we reach step 10, which is the belief and motivation. Okay, the belief and motivation. We believe that because we have actually cleared some clutter, because we've got more space, because we can see and feel a difference, hey, maybe I can do this. And maybe if I keep going with the routine, keep the momentum going, that will help with the motivation. And every time, if I clear some clutter, every time, lots of littles make a lot, and I will eventually clear it all. Lots of people struggle because they believe that the motivation needs to come here, and it doesn't. You won't get the motivation until you get to step 10. So somehow we have to figure out how to keep going through steps from 3 to 10, by which point, yeah, probably can believe that if I keep doing this, I will clear the clutter. And actually, I do want to do this. Okay, so a lot of my help that I provide is actually making sure people keep going through the steps and then keep repeating the steps. Okay, so those are the 10 steps of the positive clutter clearing cycle that we need to keep in mind for the video that I'm going to share with you tomorrow. Good. Now, I said that I would let you know what, or remind you what the 5 success factors are at step 4. So, 5 success factors. Oh, just about squeeze it in. All right. So there are 5. The first success factor is having a method that works. Now, this is really, really key. The method that we need for our clutter clearing is a method that enables us to make the right decision, a realistic decision, and get clutter off our clutter clearing conveyor belt. Yeah? So methods such as blitzing, yes, it does get clutter off the conveyor belt, but it doesn't actually help us with making informed decisions. Blitzing is usually about going through stuff and going, either being ruthless and saying, I don't need that, I'm going to get rid of that, or going through stuff and saying, well, you know, could I let it go? All right, it can go. Again, we need a method that is going to be kind, which takes into account the way that our brain works, and is one that enables us to build our confidence. Okay, so blitzing doesn't allow us to do that. Equally, a method of piling, creating piles of things, that's not a method, that's not getting things off the conveyor belt. Reorganising our clutter is not a method for getting things off our conveyor belt. Storage solutions is not a method for clearing our clutter because it doesn't get things off the conveyor belt. Okay, I know I've talked about the methods at length before. Okay, I'm sure you now realise that the method that we need to have a positive clutter clearing cycle is one which gets things off the clutter clearing conveyor belt. Okay, the second success factor, and this is a real tough one, is time and patience. Time, patience. Okay, if you are expecting to go through all of these 10 steps in a day or a weekend, and then suddenly within a matter of days you've got a beautifully clutter-free home, it's not going to work. I'm sure you've tried that. I know I tried that. It doesn't work. We need to give ourselves time so that we can actually do what needs to be done and not put ourselves under that pressure. If you haven't seen things in your clutter for possibly 5-10 years or more, how can you realistically expect to know what to do with it the minute you see it for the first time in 5 years or 10 years? You can't. That's not fair. That's not a method that is kind to your brain. And you need patience. Like I keep saying, you're going to have to go through all of these 10 steps. We're going to clear some clutter each time we go through these steps. We're going to have to do lots of cycles in order to clear all of the clutter. Okay, so we need patience. 99% of people who have clutter do not have the patience to do what needs to be done. That's why they want to go for the quick and easy option that they think, which is blitzing or storage or piling or paying to put their clutter in off-site self-storage. Okay, so time and patience are really, really important success factors. The third one. This is the doing. The doing. I obsess about doing, which is essentially doing the action. Okay, if you don't actually do some clutter clearing, then we're never going to actually clear any of the clutter. If you don't make time for it. If I had £1 or $1 for every time somebody had said to me, oh, but Claire, I'm just really busy, I haven't got time, you know, what can I do? I can't do anything. I cannot give you time. I can help you with doing the doing, I can guide you, but I can't do it for you. If it was that easy to make decisions about the things in your clutter, then I would be telling everybody, right, well, save yourself a fortune, don't pay for my help, don't pay for storage, don't pay for off-site self-storage, throw all of your belongings in a skip or a dumpster and start again. Okay? If it was that simple, then that's what I would be saying to people. I don't and do not take my advice on that. I am not responsible if you do that for the consequences. If it was that simple to make decisions, and if decision making was something you could delegate to somebody else, then what to you is a last letter from a loved one, may be to me a worthless piece of paper, a scrap of paper, and I would chuck it away. It's not that simple, is it? Many a time when I've worked with people in their homes, it always fascinates me. People are surprised that I will literally give them what is obvious rubbish or trash, obvious to them, for them to decide what to do with it, what category to put it in. So, you know, used tissues, I will give to somebody to say, right, decide which category this goes in. But many a time, there's been a little piece of plastic, for example, and I'll give it to them and they'll go, oh, that's the piece we've been looking for little Johnny's toy. That's the missing bit that won't make it work. Oh, I'm so glad we found that. To me, it's a worthless piece of plastic. If it was up to me, I would have put that in the bin, in the trash. But to them, it actually means something. They know exactly what it is when they see it. So again, we have to take responsibility and do the doing, do the action. And we can only do that when we make the time, and we can only do the doing and get the success when we're using a method that is appropriate and works. Okay. Oh, no, we're on 4, aren't we? Can't count now. The fourth success factor, really, really important. Learning and feedback. Learning and feedback. Again, this is something that takes time and patience. And we're only going to get learning and feedback when we do the doing. Only when you've done a clutter clearing session, using the clutter clearing process, can you get some feedback as about how much you managed to get done in half an hour of categorising and sorting. What sorts of things you're finding in your clutter. Only then will you get that feedback and learn from them. The example I give here is that if you're learning to drive, you may be able to drive. Do you remember what it was like when you were driving? Now, there is only one method of driving, okay? And we all have to drive the same way. Anybody who drives. I'm not saying everybody's a good driver, and I'm not saying everybody follows the rules of driving, but the method is the same. We all drive using the same method. However, when we learned to drive, we had to give ourselves time and patience. Nobody got into the car for the first time, had their first lesson, and then, right, I can go and take my test now and pass. If they do that, if they only have one lesson before they put in for their test, they've probably been trying it out at home with parents or something, or other people. Nonetheless, it's still taken time to learn the method, do the doing, and learn to drive. And there's been the inevitable learning and feedback. Who remembers having their first driving lesson, we were told the method, into gear. Gosh, it's so long since I learned to drive, I can't remember. What is it? Yeah, you've got to check your mirror and manoeuvre and indicate and all those things. The pedals, which order are they in? How many people tried to get the gear in, didn't quite get it in gear, or went off from standing still and jutted a bit? We all had to learn and get feedback from doing the doing of learning to drive until we got to a point where we were able to take our test and pass. And I always remember my driving instructor, he said, you've passed your test now, which means you've had enough learning and feedback to do the doing using the right method, and you are now safe on the roads. But your learning and feedback continues. You may have your driving license, but you will learn an awful lot more from now on in than you have learnt to get to this point. All your test result means is that you are safe to be on the road, and your learning and feedback will really start big time now. And he was right. He was right. Even though my driving instructor had a one glass eye, again, driving is a good example to use. All right, so the fifth and final success factor that we need to be able to move from wanting to clear the clutter to actually clearing some clutter is support and understanding. And understanding. Now, some people are really lucky that they get the support that they need from friends, family, loved ones. I would say the majority of us don't get the support and understanding from friends, family and loved ones, and we have to kind of go elsewhere for that. That's one of the big things that my clients and members get help for, is the support and understanding, because as we know, we've got to keep going. We've got the routine and the momentum, because we don't have the motivation until step 10. So we definitely need to have early on, we need to have support and understanding. Now, I quite often end up mediating between couples and families where there's one person in the family who is, if you like, the clutterholic, and the other members who have to live with the clutter and just don't understand and can't understand why aren't you blitzing it? Why aren't you just chucking it all away then? And this causes tension, and of course, as a clutterholic, it makes us want to hold on to the clutter even more because other people are making judgments on it and don't understand. And quite often, the support and understanding of family members is just as important as the support and understanding that the clutterholic needs. For example, quite a lot of people will come to one of our quarterly events, and they will bring their friends or family or loved ones with them, because they can then say, look, Claire is saying it's not that simple. Just listen to Claire, she understands. And I can give the advice of how to support somebody who has a clutter challenge when you haven't got a clutter challenge yourself and you can't understand why they can't just deal with it. So quite often people will come to a quarterly event, a clutter clearing event, and it's the clutterholic brings along their friends or family or loved ones so that they can understand what is appropriate support. Lots of ways that friends and family and loved ones can help, but without getting involved in the decision making. So taking things to the charity shop, taking things to recycling, taking things to the landfill. Lots of ways that friends and family can help us at a very practical level, but without causing us stress and anxiety. Okay? So those are the 5 success factors that we need in order to succeed with our clutter clearing. Makes sense? Good summary. So we've now got a summary of the 10 steps of the positive clutter clearing cycle, and we've got a breakdown of the 5 success factors which are at step 4, which is where we need to focus, because I'm sure you're at this point, step 3, you want to clear the clutter, but we need to make sure that we have these 5 success factors in order to make the next step. So why are these 5 success factors so important at step 4? In the positive clutter clearing cycle? Why can't we just skip number 4 and go straight to number 5? And how many times do we have to go through this positive clutter clearing cycle to clear the clutter? Well, tomorrow I'll show you. I'm going to draw a very bad diagram in tomorrow's video about what your clutter clearing journey is going to look like, and how the steps and the success factors all kind of fit together. Okay. But in the meantime, I would love to know your answers to 3 questions. Okay. Number 1. Which of the 10 stages of the positive clutter clearing cycle have you been missing out on? Okay, so which of these 10 steps have you been missing when you've tried to clear your clutter? So that's question number 1. Question number 2, which of the 5 success factors have you had throughout your clutter clearing to date? So which ones of these have you had? Kind of tick. All right. Which of the 5 success factors have you had throughout your clutter clearing to date? And then the third and final question, which success factor do you think will make the biggest difference to the success of your clutter clearing right now? So which of the 5 success factors do you think will make the biggest difference, biggest improvement to the success of your clutter clearing right now? Let me know below. Share your answers in the comment box below, because then we can all discover that we're all perfectly normal. Okay, great. Thank you for watching. Do look out for the video tomorrow, where I will have a very bad diagram. We can have a bit of a laugh about it, but it will make sense as to how all of these things fit together on your clutter clearing journey. In the meantime, thanks for sharing and thanks for watching, and take care. Bye bye.